my dear friend Ranjit, for inviting me for this very interesting program. And I really very impressed with the type of people that you assembled together to talk about this very important issue. So if this program was to be listed on the capital market, I'm sure it will be oversubscribed in many ways and will attract a lot of premium. And I think SEBI won't object to that either. So I think you are doing a very good job, and I really want to congratulate you for bringing together such a big team to talk about this interesting issue. Let me, first of all, thank you for putting all these five or four P's together: people, planet, profit, and pandemic, right? That is what your four P's are.
Yes, sir. Yes.
And you just mentioned, I fully, of course, agree with the interconnectivity, all the four. But just to put into perspective, the other P of all these four P's, whether pandemic has affected planet or planet has affected pandemic. It is because of pandemic, the planet is in a worse situation, or because of this worsening situation of the planet, whether the pandemic happened. It's something which you need to think, and I'm not going to deliberate on it more. I've spoken on it. I've done about more than 800 webinars on more than 100 subjects in the last, during the pandemic, so maybe a year. So I don't want to deliberate on this more because that's my passion of climate change and other issues, but I'll not get into that. But I'm just saying the concern of people is directly related to planet. And what we are discussing today, the relationship, all the four, to capital market. That is what your program is for. The capital market is a reflection what happens outside the capital market is getting reflected in the capital market. If one company reports good profit, the capital market responds to it. Of course, even the big profit may result into the script going down because the market was anticipating more profit. That's a different thing. And the profit has a different connotation. I'll just, time permits, I'll just mention. I'm not prepared a speech. I never prepare a speech. So I'm just speaking from my heart, whatever it is. But what is important is that no capital market in the world can survive without people. If the people don't benefit, the capital market can never survive. So the profit concept is in a way related to people. Now, what is understood and what you and me as chartered accountants try to think about profit has to be looked into a little broader way. The society benefits, it's a profit. And the society benefits, not necessarily every individual as a member of the society will benefit, but if there's a societal good, the larger public good, which is generated from any activity, to some extent, all the people in some form or the other will benefit. Of course, then the concept comes of equity. Whether everybody is benefiting, if not equally, in a judicious way or not, is a different issue. So society has to benefit first, and that benefit then can be captured by different entities like corporate entities also, which they can reflect that benefit into their balance sheets, below the line, above the line as profit. And then the people, because they are members of the society, and maybe some of them are also stakeholders or shareholders of these corporate entities, will also benefit. But ultimately, if you don't carry out any activity by the corporate, by the government, by the individuals, and by other entities, which are not creating societal goods, societal benefit, activity will never ever bring in long-term profit for all of us. If you really look at it, the largest societal good is served because all of us, you mentioned about India was the largest economy of the world, which is true. And our aspiration is that we will become one day, we'll bring back, revisit the history, will repeat itself. That's what our wish, our desire. As all Indians, proud Indians, we feel like that it's happened. And I'll tell you how, in what way we can make it happen. But tell me something, when we were the largest economy, what was constituting GDP at that time? Because largest economy can be captured only when you know GDP numbers. How much part of that GDP was made by steel, by cement, by automobiles? Incidentally, automobiles is the largest component of our industrial activity. Actually, manufacturing, the biggest component comes from automobiles. The largest job creator in the industrial space is automobiles. But how much was that was made by automobiles? And you cannot make automobile without steel. Now, somebody will say housing is very important because housing has a capability of pull of the entire segments of economy, services, manufacturing, and to some extent agriculture, and all of that can put together makes GDP. And you need cement for that, right? How much part of that cement was made part of that GDP? Was there anything? Was there any steel? Which is you cannot make car and you cannot build houses without that. So that means that GDP was created by whom? By the artisans of India, by the farmers of India, by ensuring you cannot continue with agriculture unless there is a planet which is actually helping you, because the entire ecosystem, larger ecosystem, can only help you agriculture. And agriculture is not that old as the human beings are. Agriculture started much, much later after the human beings were born. Otherwise, we are just hunters. We are not farmers. But anyway, so why I'm saying this is that, and what changed, Ranjitji, you didn't mention, what changed this entire composition of GDP of the world is industrial revolution. And incidentally, the industrial revolution is also the cause of causing climate change today. And in fact, all our activities today, which you try to capture, economic activities, which you, not all, but most of them, or if not all, not most, at least few of them are captured in the capital market. None of these economic activities can survive in its present form unless they are made in line with the law of planet. All economic activities are derived from leveraging your natural resources and human resources. Then you will say where the finance comes in. That's fungible. That comes from anywhere. The FDI, the FPIs, what bring the money is coming from where? Is it coming from you and me? No, it comes from outside. Why it is coming? Because they see an opportunity, because we are leveraging your natural resources and human resources in such a way that this is an opportunity. You may say innovation attracts money. Innovation what? Who does innovation? Human mind. They do innovation. Technology. Who develops technology? It doesn't get developed in laboratories. It manifests in laboratories, but it develops in human mind. And the industrial activity that started post-industrial revolution is actually using natural resources. Whether it's farmer, they're using natural resources. Your cement and steel, whether can you make cement without limestone? Can you make steel without natural resources? Or for that matter, anything. Anyway, so even this so-called knowledge-based industry, high-tech industries, they are all relationship. Can you run IT industry without a computer? The hardware is necessary for a software to work. Can you make hardware without natural resources? Now, the new challenge is, of course, is to use natural resources more judiciously, and therefore nanotechnology and many others are coming in. Now, the question that comes in today, therefore, is this $5 trillion economy. I have limited times, I'm going from one issue to another. Where was this 5 trillion number was born? When we talked about 5 trillion, our economy was 2.5 trillion. And as it has happened, you mentioned about the history of economies of the world. We got 1 trillion after the record keeping started. But we doubled from 1 to 2 trillion happened in a record time. And 2 to 3, of course, would have happened had not pandemic taken place, again in a good time. So 2.5 to 5 and 5 to 10, and maybe bigger, but we'll not necessarily get into that, has happened in other economies. Particularly in our neighbor China, this actually doubling happened at a much faster rate, which no world economy has been able to do any time in the past. The model was different and our model is different. That was public sector driven, investment led, and now they are trying to move towards consumption led, that you mentioned first. Now, India has a potential to become double the economy. The number of years depend upon the rate of growth. If you grow at faster rate, you will double it in a record time. If you grow at a slower rate, which is now today's forced by the pandemic, it will happen little later, but it's bound to happen. Later, we have challenges because the per capita income gets affected. And we prepared a plan for $5 trillion economy. I had prepared. Prime Minister's vision was 5 trillion. As a Commerce Industry Minister, I said, let me at least prepare the roadmap. So I said 20% of that 5 trillion will come from industry, not manufacturing, industry. That's $1 trillion. 60% will come from services, that's $3 trillion. And another 20% will come from agriculture, which is another $1 trillion. That makes 5 trillion. Little bit balanced than today's composition of India's GDP. It is skewed today in favor of services. It has happened. So US is completely dominated by services. But it has happened over a period of time. The transition happened from agro-based industry, industrialized to services later. But if you have a skewed structure, that affects people. Because more the industrialization which is going to happen in the world, there is possibility of job loss is more. Because the fourth industrial revolution and maybe fifth and sixth that will happen over a period of time, it is all going to be led by technology. Of course, all revolutions have been led by technology, but even agriculture is done by technology of a different kind. Whether you're using bullock cart is also technology, but technological led innovation and industrialization is not necessarily going to create more jobs. And therefore, the services and agriculture, today agriculture has more jobs, but it is called disguised employment. So we must find out how the new paradigm that is going to happen of growth in India should also benefit people. And to get people benefit from it, you must have a strategy. If the people have to move out of agriculture, and they must move, as it has happened in most of the countries, that industrial production went up, but people depend on agriculture, who, in any case, don't want to continue agriculture for various reasons, social reasons also, because if you're a farmer's son, unfortunately, it is not considered as a very coveted job. And to do that, the people-led growth is very important. In any case, as I mentioned earlier, all growth happens because you leverage the human resource. How do you do that in case of India? That's a strategy. In fact, I'd worked on that today. There is no time. One other day, Ranjitji, if you invite me, I'll speak about it at length. But just, I will already run out of my time, then I can just...
No, you are continue, sir. Continue.
Sure. So let me mention about now the other aspect, the macro level aspect. I will not tell you about how we did industrial 20%. I had prepared detailed plan, how much of that will come from which sector of industry, and that was done in consultation industry. For services, we had identified 12 champion sector of services for which 5,000 crores was allocated, approved by the cabinet to get 12 champion sectors to grow faster. And in agriculture, I was lucky enough, under the guidance of Prime Minister, I prepared the first ever agriculture export policy for India. That is showing result immediately. During pandemic, our agriculture exports have increased. Can you imagine? And the target for that is $100 billion, which includes all 5 components of agriculture. Anyway, now coming back to these macro issues. How does 5 trillion affect? You mentioned one aspect of that, Ranjit, in your introductory remarks. Savings. India's savings rate has to improve considerably. Now, there's always a trade-off because you mentioned savings and consumption at the same time. If you save more, obviously your consumption is less. Because where is the income coming from? Income is coming from one simple source, household. Part of the household income goes into the capital market you mentioned, and that is very low in India. Part of the household income will go into investment. Part of the household income will go into savings. But even if you save in the banks or in some other source, sometimes you save in gold, sometimes you save in physical form, in properties. But a savings rate of India has to improve considerably at this stage of development. Then only investment rate can grow. Otherwise, if you want investment-led growth and consumption at the same time, then investment-led growth cannot happen without saving. And if you don't less saving and you want higher investment, the only recourse is borrowing. And therefore, we must have a very judicious balance of all these put together. There's a trade-off. If you encourage savings, you are, in a way, not encouraging investment or rather consumption. But anyway, so now there are the macro issues. One is the savings on the $5 trillion economy. Other is tax to GDP ratio. And I could see in the panel some very eminent people from direct taxes professionals. So I should not venture into saying anything more because they are so knowledgeable. But they will tell you that our tax to GDP ratio improves, and if $5 trillion and if tax to GDP ratio is also improving, that much money is available with the government. And incidentally, the money coming to the government can also add to savings, because finally the savings has 3 components: corporate saving, individual saving, household saving, and government saving. Today, government is not saving because there is a fiscal deficit. So that means there is more borrowing than the income. But that's for a period of time. If 5 trillion and become 10 trillion and our tax to GDP ratio improves, that means so much of money will be available for putting into investment like infrastructure, into social sectors. All of that will benefit finally your capital market also. So that's what your program is essentially developed on. So profit is a concept which has to be understood in a different way. If we can have an entire economic ecosystem of the economy, benefits in some form or the other, one day or the other, it will get reflected in your capital market. But if there is an intrinsic weakness into the entire ecosystem of economy, maybe for some time the corporates will benefit, sometimes the individual will make more money from the investment, but over a long period of time, it will never benefit economy as a whole. And to do that, we have to plan properly. Therefore, what 4 P's you put are interconnected and very important. So we must ensure that people will benefit, and people's benefit will come only when, as I said, these larger benefits come in. Planet, you cannot run any business without planet. In fact, today, there will be more losses to the world economy because of planet. This is all documented. You mentioned about OECD. The report of OECD, right? You just mentioned, I think. But OECD is the organization of the rich countries. But there are, under the UN umbrella, there are so many reports which suggest that the losses accruing to the economy of the world will be far, far greater than the profits we are making because of the vulnerability of the world to the challenges which are posed by the climate change. So natural disasters cause damage to the economy. The lack of water and more water at the same time will cause damage to the economy. Anyway, so point is, economy can never be sustained unless planet is not taken care of, and people will suffer more if the planet is not taken care of. And then the pandemic has caused, and actually is a time to rethink about the whole business model of the world. We are interdependent, and that is what pandemic has shown. And because we are interrelated and interdependent, we are affected by something happening in a far corner of the world. Today, Antarctica has pandemic, little bit, because there's not many people anyway. What is the relationship between Antarctica and because pandemic spreads rapidly, so we are interconnected. So that is that we have to keep in mind that because this interconnection, whether globalization we oppose or support, this is already happening and affecting you and me. Now coming back, and let me conclude because I know there are so many eminent people talking about it, so I'm the least of the competent among them. Therefore, I should not be taking their precious time. I think it's a good time for India. You mentioned the consumption has gone down. You mentioned savings should be higher than what they are. But the pent-up demand will result into the growth in world economy. India will benefit definitely. You'll see. And India could be the big gainer with the strategies put in place. And I realized it even before pandemic. 3 years ago, I prepared, or 4 years ago, I prepared another strategic geopolitics and geoeconomics, how they should work together. And I'd set up a group under Surjit Bhalla, who is now our representative in International Monetary Fund, and Jaishankar, who is now our foreign minister, had made him a member of that. And there, of course, Adil Zainul and many others. And we prepared a roadmap. And I can clearly tell you that though I never imagined, I'm not an astrologer to predict that there will be pandemic, but we have to create proofing of our economics against such challenges and such uncertainties by aligning India through geopolitics and geoeconomics. And geopolitics only drives the geoeconomics, and geoeconomics will be influenced by geopolitics. So we have to marry both and work on that. And I can tell you, whether it's global supply chains or value chains or others, India is poised to grow at a much better rate when the stability happens on this health front. So please be assured that we are on the right path under the leadership of Narendra Modi ji. He is taking right steps in the right manner. He cannot satisfy each and every segment of the population at the same time, but larger good has to be prevailed, and we are planning according to that. So let me assure you that we are on the right path. We'll be guided by some of the brilliant ideas that will be generated by this great panel. And I'm very sure Ranjit will keep fighting this battle for good ideas and better ideas. And he'll grow from 0 to 1,500. And you'll see that the intermittent period was only an aberration on the world economic scene, and will occupy a rightful place as we go along. And for occupying that place, brilliant ideas from all of you will also guarantee that take place on the high table of the world. Thank you very much. I'm sorry if I've taken more time and spoken something which obviously is not as good or could be even slightest of the good as all of you will put into this seminar in the coming minutes. Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Thank you very much, sir, for very thought-provoking thoughts you have shared. I know that when you were the Minister of Commerce, you have set this roadmap of $5 trillion. And on the basis of that, the government is working since last 4 years. And you rightly divided this 5 trillion in 20%, 20%, 60%. And this tax to GDP ratio and the savings are the important component. So, sir, we given a time, we will take your time later on and have a detailed deliberation because it was the keynote address. So we could not have the much time. So on this capital market event. So thank you very much, sir, for joining. I request our treasurer, Ritesh Bimal, to just officially have a vote of thanks to CS Suresh Prabhu.
Thank you, Ranjit ji. Thank you, Ranjit ji. It was, I echo the sentiments and the words expressed by you. It was a great honor